We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
You know I blame it on industry. I blame it on my own hypocrisy. Miseducation and politicians. No one's willing to step up and speak.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Pace Radio Show. It's June the 9th and we are live here at paceradio.net. I'm Al Graham and today I'm joined by my joint host Julie Chiariello, who's got special guests, 3 of them tonight, who are working hard to bring alternative cannabis products and other things to patients. Well, I'm sure we'll find out where across the U.S. or across the state. I'm not 100% sure, but Julie will fill me in on that, won't you, Julie?
Yes, I will. I'm very excited about this amazing family that we're going to have here tonight with us.
Yes.
I met them actually quite a long time ago. It must be maybe 9 years ago now, 8 years.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. And so, yeah, I'm very pleased, Al, to have them on the show tonight. And I'll share a little bit during of their bio before we bring them on. But
Sure.
How are you doing? How's everything going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, unfortunately here where I'm located, we are in the midst of an invasion of the gypsy moth caterpillars. I have 2 huge maple trees in my front yard and an oak tree in my side yard to share with my neighbor. And all 3 of them have been stripped of all their leaves from the caterpillars eating them. You can actually hear it at nighttime. It sounds like it's raining out, but it's either them eating or their feces falling down and landing on the leaves.
See, I called Ontario and Quebec Narnia. And see what I mean? You guys waited 7 months to get sunshine, and now
we're
dealing with pest invasions.
It is like
what kind
it
of
is so bad. I had to wash my driveway because of the feces that are all over the driveway. You can't walk down the driveway without going around them because they're hanging. They're from the tree, literally 20, 30, 40 of them hanging from the trees, and you look like you're drunk going up the driveway. You just try to go around them. It's just brutal. People are complaining the government left and right. This happened back in the 80s. And I guess there's a cycle, and people can't sit outside, and they're getting rashes and welts on their arms and on their bodies from these things crawling on us. Whether it's a bite or or some type of infection that comes off of their hairs or something, I'm not 100% sure. But you can tell where they are because the ground is brown, like the sidewalk or the road. It's brown. Like I've had to wash it off it's all over my vehicles. Like it's it's like a horror movie. Really.
I think we get it. I'm sitting here smiling. I'm in California, and I know. So our guests tonight are in California. So listen, I'm not missing it over there. Okay, I'm sorry. It's just the way that it is.
Yeah. This is the second year. Yeah, it's like you say, Narnia. You wouldn't think. Well, yeah, we're being invaded by caterpillars. So that's what's going on in my world
I'm sorry
right now.
for you, my friend.
Where are you located?
I'm located in Ontario, Canada. I'm 2 hours east of Toronto, and it's not out of the normal when you're sitting there watching TV and all of a sudden you got this caterpillar walking across your shoulder.
Yeah, it's Linda. It's you popped in. We're going to introduce you right now, but yeah, it's amazing because this place has 7 months of winter, and then as soon as the sun and May rolls around, the snow is melting. It's not even melted all the way, and you've got mosquitoes and bugs coming. So I've always given Al a hard time
Now,
But
and now we got
yeah,
caterpillars.
he's living in a special place over there.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do want to introduce our guest because I know
Yes.
time is going to fly with 3 special guests on instead of our normal one. And so I just wanted to share with everybody a little bit more about the company that these 3 wonderful people run and have created. And it's called Randy's Club. It started as Randy's Remedy. It's a product line made from a blend of botanically complete plants for use in our topical and for use in their topical and oral products. This brand was developed by the Strause group, Linda, Tyler, and Brendon Strause. And Randy's Remedy products, they are the products that they wished that they had when their husband and father, Randy, was diagnosed with a very rare form of brain cancer, an incurable cancer. And this is what they had wished that they could have had for Randy during his fight against cancer. And through the years, with their research and development, they have developed an incredible line of products that has brought relief to many. And, it's a whole, really a lifestyle brand that I see that this wonderful family is developing, and I've loved to watch them over the years continue to evolve and strengthen their offering. And it's a great honor to have you all here tonight with us. Linda, Tyler, and Brendon, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I guess as mom, I could sort of
Thank you for having us.
Agreed. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And welcome to the broadcast. And our listeners look forward to listening to your story and everything you got to say.
Well, I think probably the best place to... Go ahead, Julie.
No, you go ahead. Where do you think the best place is to start? I'm sure it's where I was going to begin as well.
Well, go ahead.
I was really going to ask you to start at the beginning. That's really where I was going to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And I wanted each of you to have a chance to share, how did Randy's Remedy first begin, and what was it that led you to create this? I know I alluded to it in the intro, but I wanted to hear, and the listeners to hear, each of your individual stories. So we can start with you, Linda, as the mother and matriarch of the family.
So I am the mother, and it's a pleasure to work with my 2 sons, I have to admit. That's a whole other topic and learning experience of a family company. But it really started, you're correct, we've met probably close to 9 years ago. Randy was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which I have to say, unfortunately, is probably not as rare, especially with the people who have had it. We are talking Ted Kennedy, you're talking Beau Biden, more recently John McCain. So it has had a lot of notoriety, if you will, just because of, the people who have actually succumbed to the disease. It is an incurable brain cancer, like you said. Randy was diagnosed in 2008 and died in 2010. That 2-year span is pretty consistent for individuals who are able to have surgery, followed by radiation at the time and chemotherapy. Without that, it's of course even shorter, but that's a pretty consistent timeline. And this was all before Prop 64. So, and I am a child of the 60s, which means I lived it, so I don't remember it. No, but marijuana was just something we grew. Sorry, I can't resist saying that. Such a standard line for us baby boomer, flower children. But, I share it because, smoking marijuana and getting, high was not a strange thing for Randy and I. We grew up, got married, went to Santa Barbara, grew our own plants in the backyard, and did all of that stuff. But what happened was an interesting transition. Thankfully, we did have Prop 215, but using marijuana as medicinal, or I hesitate to say medicine, but as a medicinal form versus, hey, we're going out to a party, let's smoke a joint and leave, something like that. But it was a very interesting transition, and it actually was a struggle. So I'm going to share two stories, and then I'll pass it on to Tyler to sort of transition and move towards production and the formation of Randy's Club. But the two stories was actually a very personal one, and it actually ended up to sort of be a point of contention between Randy and I, especially during that first year, because as his disease progressed and he couldn't work and he was around and home, he would want to smoke a joint. I was still trying to go to work and deal with, some form of life normalcy, and I'd go, well, I can't do this. I mean, I can't get high and then go to work. That just doesn't work. And it was this interesting conflict where at the same time we were trying to get him to use it to improve his appetite, to improve sleep, to decrease anxiety, just to give him a better quality of life. So finding that little balance. But more importantly, and much later in the disease progression, sleep was just, you can't imagine not sleeping for 2 years. And I don't say that lightly. It's that, yes, you go to bed, yes, you wake up, but you're really not in any deep REM sleep. So exhaustion becomes a huge problem. And I think it was Tyler came upstairs, rolled a joint, and said, Dad, go out on the deck, smoke, take a couple hits. He goes, I'm going to leave it right here. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, just get up, go outside, take another couple hits, and go back to bed. And I vividly remember a night's sleep. And that became our new pattern, and it moved from smoking a joint to vaporizing and other, experiments that we did with, making foods and edibles and things like that. And so when he died, I think it was Tyler who I'll hand it off on, because worked and did go back to school to finish college. Tyler started, exploring the cannabis world. So Tyler, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, thank you. As my mom said, our journey really began as consumers first, and then caregivers for my father. I too sort of distinctly remember, going upstairs that first night, thinking to myself, if there's one thing I learned in college, it's that if I smoked enough weed, I'd fall asleep. And since, that was the problem my dad was having, and it was affecting his quality of life in a very serious way, that, by just, rolling him a joint and saying, you're going to smoke this whole thing and you're going to fall asleep. And then if you wake up in the middle of the night, don't lie in bed, contemplating your mortality, and don't wake mom up, go outside, have a few hits, lie back down. And if you don't fall asleep quickly, go back outside and do it again. And I too was actually a little surprised at how quickly and effectively it was, considering that he had been using sleeping pills to fall asleep at night. And, with cannabis, the sleeping pills were no longer necessary. And, that was a turning point for me, because that was when I sort of realized that the somewhat haphazard way in which we had been using cannabis, mostly for symptom management, needed to be, we needed to step up our game and start using it much more systematically. And from that point forward, we really became much more diligent in how we were using cannabis. We figured, why wait until he was uncomfortable? Let's just get him on a schedule. And so that's what we did. And, unfortunately, he did pass away in 2010. My brother Brendon, went back to school to finish college, and, not really knowing what I wanted to do, but having a sense that I, couldn't just go back to the previous life that I had led and pretend like, nothing had happened over those 2 years. I, really started pursuing the cannabis industry and looking for ways to innovate, because I reflected on the fact that as effective as cannabis was, it was often difficult to find sort of consistent products. And, we would find something that would work particularly well, and then we would go back to the dispensary and they wouldn't have it anymore. And, it's one thing if you're, using cannabis, for its side effects, but we were really, really trying to use cannabis and minimize its side effects. And so, eventually, testing did become available. we sort of discovered CBD as sort of a non-psychoactive cannabinoid that, could be beneficial and work synergistically with THC. And, obviously since then, the whole range of cannabinoids available and our understanding has grown just, by such incredible leaps and bounds that I oftentimes look back at our relative ignorance at the time and frankly just marvel at how much progress we've made. And I know it never seems fast enough, but I really am thrilled at the fact that I am, I'll very likely, be alive to see the end of cannabis prohibition globally. I'm not holding my breath, but I feel like we've really crossed the tipping point, and we've gotten to a point where we're now negotiating the terms of their surrender. And I think that's a great place for us to be. And we won't always get everything that we want, but at least, people aren't being arrested. Patients have better access today than they ever have in the past. While there are still far too many states that continue to prohibit cannabis, those policies are increasingly becoming, utterly untenable. Cops in Texas, complaining that they can't tell the difference between hemp flower and cannabis flower, to which I say good. And, the rest is really, up to, well, the history that we're writing right now, and I know that we've all sort of been a part of writing that and growing this industry in a way that is, again, getting back to my perspective as a consumer, an industry that I myself would want to participate in, and that I would also, feel comfortable, engaging with it in order to take care of, friends and family who might, in the future find themselves, suffering from a cancer diagnosis. But it was really in 2014 when I, and I'll pass this off to my brother to sort of share his perspective, because after he graduated, he actually moved in with me, and we ran a collective for a little while. And then as the sort of end of the unregulated markets came to be in California, we started our business and pivoted into the hemp space in order to sort of wait and see how the regulated market would unfold. So Brendon, why don't you share a little bit about the early days of Randy's Club and how how it became the hemp business that it is today.
Yeah, thanks for that lead-in. But it was, as my brother alluded to, the experience with my father and having that personal transition from cannabis as a recreational drug to cannabis as more of a medicinal use just changed my perspective. It really took going through that experience to understand that there really is a difference. And so after I graduated from college, I got a couple little jobs, but I always sort of had this need and desire to help people, for lack of a better term. I graduated with a focus on environmental education and really appreciate, especially in this industry, the ability to help people understand how these products work and how they can best use them given whatever the ailments they're dealing with. So at the time, as Tyler said, we did the California Collective. We had a network of patients who used our formulas, and we were able to get that firsthand experience how, particularly patients who are dealing with some serious illnesses, but also the sort of everyday, growing old type of illnesses, early arthritis or joint pain, issues such as sleep or anxiety, as you get older and you get more responsibilities. And so that experience working directly with patients under the Prop 215 rules and regulations was really, really helpful. But the timing was the end of times. So at that point when hemp was being legalized, one of the studies that we've pointed to, and it's been a longitudinal study about cannabis use across the country, roughly 20 to 25% of the population uses cannabis at least once a month. And that's been pretty consistent all the way back to, mid-60s, I think is when they started the study. And so we looked at that 75% of the population who didn't want anything to do with cannabis. I always joke, reefer madness worked on them. And so we wanted to make a product for them. And that's where Randy's Club started and Randy's Remedies started. And, that was the time when CBD was starting to get its headway and really get into the public speech and people understanding the differences between these cannabinoids. And, ultimately that transition is where we're at today with figuring out how we're going to end prohibition. And so one of the things during that time that we tried to focus on as we realized we were going to be starting a bigger business than a small collective with just the two of us is what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. And my mother's background in the biotech space and big pharma gave her a network that was very unique given the cannabis space. And so we really tried to capitalize on that and focused on the needs that we needed in our experience with my father. And we sort of focused in on this product development, creating, high-performance formulas that are super effective at a relatively low dose in order to give people a real bang for their buck and allow people who wouldn't normally try one of these products to give it a try and really see the benefits for themselves. Because one of the things I'm sure you know is the more you use cannabis, the better you get at using cannabis. And everyone who uses it regularly knows exactly what works for them and particularly what doesn't work for them. And so that's what we really hoped to achieve with our high CBD products in Randy's Remedy, available across the country. And we really try and have that brand image of something comfortable, something that you can, leave on your countertop. And, one of our ideal clients was actually my grandmother. And I was telling her, I'm like, when you're explaining this to your friends and they don't even know what hemp or, it doesn't matter. Just get them to use the products, because we know that if they use it and it's a botanical product, that's good enough for us. I don't really need to evangelize you or get you to completely understand the math and science behind it all. The products really work for themselves. So,
that's powerful.
I feel like we've been talking for a little while, Julie. Do you have anything that you want us to focus in on, or?
I'm going to guide you. We're heading to the break soon. I just wanted to comment on everything that you guys said before we head to the break, and then we'll dig in some more. But you guys are so amazing, honestly. Just seeing how you guys even work together, I always marveled at it. And, sharing your story tonight, you just can see, what an amazing thing for so much beauty to be born from the pain and the heartache and the loss of your father and of your husband, Linda, that you guys synergized, that you guys really became so dynamic. And it's so cool. I didn't know that you were partying in IV, Linda, in Isla Vista, Santa Barbara. For those listening in, it is famous as an amazing party town.
Yeah, and remember,
so that's cool to know.
Yep, and I'm old, so I was there, the year after they burnt the famous bank in Isla Vista. I was there in the 70s.
When there was still
the good old days.
The good old days when actually the freeway stopped at Santa Barbara.
I haven't got a clue.
Who go around.
I'm just thinking where the freeway stopped, and then now it's probably just massive and goes through the same area, but it's just so much bigger now. Yeah. All right.
It's definitely changed.
Yeah,
but there's something idyllic that has been captured still in that area, and I'm thankful that it hasn't been too overgrown. I'm actually also thankful that the wine industry and also now the cannabis industry is taking root there, and I feel like it'll help to protect the natural beauty. Instead of tract homes, I'd rather see vineyards and cannabis farms.
Yes.
Completely agreed. The world is growing, whether we like it or not, and so it's really managing growth, because ignoring it is, definitely not an answer.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I agree with one of you commented earlier about how eventually it's going to be legal worldwide, and you're hoping that it'd be around at that time. It is. I agree. It's growing and spreading, and there's more countries that are legalizing it or bringing it in for the medical reasons. I know on the Reefer Reporters here in the network, we report on that constantly of countries that are doing it, and it's going to happen. It's going to take a little bit longer, but it's not over yet. We still got a lot of stigma to get rid of as well.
We do.
Oh, yes. I'm excited
They'll
to
be
talk
holding their breath,
about that
Yes.
after the break.
Sounds good. All right. After break we go. When we get back, Julie and I will continue our conversation with our guests, Linda, Tyler, and Brendon Strause. You're listening to the Pace Radio Show. We are live here at paceradio.net.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponic superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go.
CP operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CP.
Are you interested in Canadian and international cannabis news? If you are, then catch myself, Kim Cooper, and Al Graham for our live Reefer Report on the Pace Radio Network, found at paceradio.net.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains. And when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plants, garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
The People's Alliance of Cannabis in Canada is an organization working to improve cannabis legalization in Canada. They have a mission and values that includes all Canadians, no matter where they come from. Their values are including everyone, as no one should be excluded from participating, equality, diversity, advocacy, along with cannabis education and research, plus industry, safety, and professional standards. If this is an organization that has the same values as you, check them out at peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Once again, peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Check them out.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Hey, we're back, and we are live here at paceradio.net. Today on the program, we're joined by our guests, Linda, Tyler, and Brendon Strause of Randy's Club, plus my joint host, Skunk Magazine co-owner and editor, Julie Chiariello. Before the break there, we got to hear about the story, the family story, and how everything got going. Julie, I believe you've got some more information we're going to discuss.
Absolutely. And people can go if they want to get a visual of what we're talking about. You can go to Randy's Club. Is it .com, guys?
Yes.
Yep, randysclub.com. If you search for Randy's Club, we pop up right there on top.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. And I wanted to dive in now to just talk a little bit about the creation of the products, which I always found interesting. I remember, when we first met, Tyler, you were speaking about efficacy and absorption and viability of products and the body's ability to get the most use out of it. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about the product line that you've created and how you developed Randy's Club with these products.
Absolutely. I think it's first important to point out that, cannabis is an incredibly forgiving plant, and it's an incredibly it can be very easy for people to use. That's why people have been using cannabis in less than systematic ways for a long, long time. And so what we really wanted to do was try and step things up a bit. As my mother Linda mentioned earlier, her background is in clinical drug development. She's also an adjunct professor at UCSD, where she teaches an introduction to human nutrition. So I like to say that she does a good job of standing on the fence when it comes to talking about cannabis as a plant, as a food source, and also as a medicinal product that people are using to manage symptoms and treat their diseases. And so, with her background, we really decided that we would try and lean into her network in order to develop products that were sort of head and shoulders above what most people were making at the time. And so what we did was we actually reached out to a colleague of my mother's who owns a contract research organization, which is a business that basically conducts research, mostly on behalf of drug companies. And we sat down with them and we explained to them what we wanted to do, that we wanted to create a topical product as well as an oral sublingual product that were optimized for the delivery of cannabinoids to the skin and body. Talking first about the lotion product, we realized that the skin was a somewhat untapped, underdeveloped category. And that's for a variety of reasons. People have been making cannabis balms for a long time. Many people found them to be beneficial, but a lot of people found them to be kind of meh. And, after doing some research, we realized that was probably because, cannabinoids are not very well absorbed across the skin. And so likely the products that were working were the ones that were extremely potent, and the ones that weren't working so well were probably less potent. And, given that cost is a major consideration for people using cannabis medicinally, and that it's often the reason that people don't use as much as they would like, we felt that by optimizing and focusing on performance, that not only could we deliver a more effective product, but we could also deliver a better value for consumers. And so what we did was, we looked at the skin and, we realized that, not only is the skin the largest organ in our body, but if you actually look at the organs sort of inside the cell, all the targets of opportunity that you would want to hit with cannabinoids are all there. You've got immune cells, you've got nerve endings, and those are all targets for cannabinoids. So we knew that if we could deliver cannabinoids effectively to the skin, that we would very likely get some positive benefit. And so anyhow, the work that our partners did is a fairly sophisticated process. They've got a lot of experience, which gives them a leg up in terms of the formulation. But one of the challenges with formulating any kind of complex product is that the performance of the active, the cannabinoids in this case, is really unpredictable. the only way you can measure it is by testing it and measuring it, seeing, how much you're actually delivering. And so what our partners did was they basically iterated, I think it was about 115 or 116 different variations on our original formulation, which we had developed in-house for the purely cosmetic qualities. We wanted to make sure it was, went on smoothly, that it didn't smell bad, and was going to be a product that people would be willing to use over and over and over again. Because as we, tell our customers, consistent regular use is the key. And so in order for our products to be used consistently and regularly, they have to be palatable, they have to be aesthetically appealing. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how effective they are. If you don't like the way it tastes, if you don't like the way it feels when it goes onto your skin, you're not likely to use it consistently and regularly. And so after our partners developed all those different variations on our original formulation and then tested them using skin analogs to determine which formulation would deliver the cannabinoids most efficiently, they came upon a formulation that was more than 2.5 times more efficient at delivering CBD to the skin than our original formulation. So that what that means is it's not only does it mean that it's delivering more cannabinoids to the skin and body, but it also means that it's delivering those cannabinoids more quickly. And so some of the effects are topical, in other words, the quality of your skin, but many people find that the lotion itself is quite calming, which does sort of suggest that it's having a systemic effect. Now, we tend to recommend that our customers use both the topical and the oral products together because we believe that that's really the best way to target inflammation, both systemically and locally, because, inflammation is the primary goal with cannabinoid therapy, and inflammation tends to affect, different parts of your body in different ways, but at the same time, it's affecting your entire body as a whole. And so in order to, really effectively, manage inflammation and, really keep that inflammatory response in a sort of a healthy, balanced state, you have to be sure that you're targeting both the symptoms as well as the systemic activity. And so we have our topical product, our lotion, and we also have our oral emulsion, which again was developed for the purposes of maximizing absorption across that oral mucosal membrane in your mouth. The inside of your mouth is highly vascularized, and one of the challenges with a lot of oil-based tinctures is the cannabinoids, because they are fat soluble, sort of tend to want to stay in the oil and not get absorbed across that mucosal membrane. And so most of the cannabinoids that you take orally with your oil-based tinctures, you really end up swallowing them. And oral administration is fine, but there are some challenges with oral administration because it can take longer for the cannabinoids to enter your bloodstream. And it also, goes through your liver first, which, converts, the cannabinoids into their hydroxy form. And so it just adds a layer of complexity. It also adds, a time that you have to wait. And it can be challenging for people to find their optimal dosing. That's why people are so fond of inhalation, because it hits you almost immediately and you can sort of, really fine-tune the effects without, necessarily consuming too much. Whereas with edibles, as many of us have experienced, if you accidentally consume too much and you consume too much THC, well, you're just going to have to ride it out because unfortunately there's no uneating an edible. So the combination of, oral mucosal product as well as an optimized topical formulation was really where we decided to plant our flag. And really try and avoid a lot of the complexity that a lot of other companies have pursued, and really, stayed away from the potency wars because, again, we feel that it's much more important for customers to use products consistently and regularly. As Brendon alluded to earlier, everybody seems to get better at using these types of products the more consistently and regularly they use them. as they, as they get a feel for how they affect themselves, as they get a feel for how much they need given, the kind of stress that they're under. There are certain days that I personally double up my dose because I got a long day ahead of me and I know it's going to be stressful. And, I want to make sure I am well supplemented so that I'm able to, deal with whatever may come. That I think is really where we've tried to. Yeah. Well, perfect.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I just took 2 doses before the call, and I wanted to see. But I've been taking the supplement that you sent me, and I really appreciate what you're saying, and it's something that's unusual. So please continue because, we hear always about, big amounts of, and the MIGs and also the focus on THC. And then, of course, with CBD, there's just tons of confusion in that market. So I really appreciate just all of the in-depth research that you guys have done to help the consumer get more educated to understand how the science really works. So please continue. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just thought it was so cute that sometimes you double up your dose, and I doubled up my dose today.
No, you're absolutely, and as I said, it's something that I myself learned. That there were days because I would use our products as consistently and as regularly as I, recommend our customers use them. And, I found that there were days, that on the long days, that, by the end I was still, running a little ragged. And as I sort of discovered if I doubled up on those days, and, most people, you can look at your calendar and you can usually tell whether you got a long day ahead of you. And so I've just sort of learned to look at my calendar, and if it looks like I got a long day ahead of me, I won't be sort of beholden to habit just because it's a habit, but will really, pay attention to how my body is feeling and how I expect to feel that day and really make sure that I am, fueling myself up for the day. And, I think that it is important to sort of step back and acknowledge that, it is important for people to use as much as they need to use in order to get the relief that they need. And so it isn't about telling people to microdose or megadose. It's about encouraging people to use it as they need to, as they need to use it. I learned a term when I was working with a cannabis doctor in the early days, called pro-renata. It's a doctor term that basically means as needed. And oftentimes drugs would be prescribed to patients and they would be instructed to use them pro-renata, which means as needed. And that's really the approach that we have taken. One of the things that's also interesting is that people's use changes in more fundamental ways as their body heals. One of the things that we know is that when you are suffering an ailment or some kind of physical malady, that oftentimes those conditions can be associated with a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system. And, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, the endocannabinoid system is the system in our body that cannabinoids target. And the role of the endocannabinoid system is rather complex, but it can actually be explained somewhat simply as the global homeostatic modulator for all of our body systems. And, you'll often hear us use this term homeostasis a lot, which is often described as a kind of balance. But unlike a balance where you can achieve a sort of a static equilibrium, right, where neither side is rising or falling, that's not the case with homeostasis. You will never achieve a static equilibrium with homeostasis unless, of course, you're dead. Because our bodies are in sort of a constant state of creative destruction, and that sort of inherent disequilibrium requires our bodies to sort of maintain homeostasis in both creative and destructive processes. And one of the challenges that our bodies face in maintaining homeostasis is that many of our homeostatic processes are sort of adaptive. In other words, our bodies will accommodate the environment that we find ourselves in. They will accommodate the diet that we eat. And so the endocannabinoid system sort of sits on top and helps to modulate that homeostatic process so that that balance can be as fine as possible. Because that's really what we characterize as sort of good health and vitality, is not only a body that is in homeostatic balance, but a body in which that homeostatic balance is being very well modulated. And so, I use blood sugar as an example, because people are often familiar with the sort of energy rush that you get when you consume, sugary foods, and then the subsequent crash that can follow. And that is really what's going on in there is you consume the sugars and your blood sugar goes up, the amount of energy available to your body increases. Eventually your body, kicks in and starts, secreting insulin, which causes the blood sugar to crash. That crash is then associated with, feeling lethargic and sleepy. But, if you can sort of modulate that process and keep that range as narrow as possible, not only do you feel better, but you're also doing a lot less harm to your body, because, oftentimes, as I said, it's a creative destructive process that has to be well modulated. Otherwise, life itself will kill you. And so, good health and vitality is oftentimes characterized by that, very sort of finely tuned state of being that is hard to sort of describe, but it's easy to recognize when you experience it. And that's really been our focus is really trying to better understand ourselves, so that we can help educate other people, so that they can better understand and feel confident starting. That's oftentimes the biggest challenge because of the propaganda that people have been subjected to over the 80 some odd years now. You really have to take a kind and compassionate approach to educating folks, and you really have to care that they understand what it is that they need to understand in order to feel confident to start, because there are so many people out there who could benefit from these products, but are afraid or unsure or just don't know where to start. And it's really been wonderful that CBD has given so many of those people a way to sort of a low impact entry into the world of cannabis. And
right.
We do oftentimes, it is. And and we don't shy away when we get calls from customers who we feel would benefit from THC and they're in a state where they can access it legally. We encourage them to combine CBD with THC in order to find the ratio and the amount that is going to work best for them, and really encourage them to take the lead. I tell people, you're in charge. I'm here to answer your questions, not here to tell you what to do. If you want help getting started, that's what I'm here for. But ultimately, this is a patient-centered approach, and the patients are in charge. And I think that's the wonderful thing about cannabis is it really gives people control over their own health and well-being. No one can tell you how much cannabis to use.
I like what you're saying about that, one of the things that you repeatedly said, which I think is so important for people everywhere across the planet to know, is that through observing the body, to bring that human intelligence back, which has been lost a bit, for humans to remember their ability, to observe their body, and to listen and learn. As an herbalist, I was taught these things that each person is unique. Their chemical constitution is unique. Every human and every mammal has an endocannabinoid system, right? And every human and mammal operates with the concept of homeostasis. And I love the poetry of what you said, that, we're constantly being born and dying, that birth and death are in union, always within this expression of homeostasis. And I just think that is just so beautiful, and we must do an article on that. But I think that's a real encouragement. I'm always talking about a renaissance, and the idea of the renaissance really is for humans to remember that innate intelligence that we have, to know thyself and to observe the self and to work with the plant allies and the foods and the gifts that we have from Mother Nature to heal and empower ourselves and to create vitality and in a natural way and bring the body back into balance. Yeah.
Absolutely, Julie.
And, I will... Go ahead, Brendon.
That's okay. I was going to build off of what you said earlier about, only you can feel what's going on inside of your body. And it reminded me of one of the stories back when we were under Prop 215. And I want to say the person, it was some neurodegenerative disorder. And they had the when you're sick, you sort of tense your shoulders up and everything gets a little bit more rigid. And your whole body is in the state of stress and tenseness when you're dealing with a chronic illness like that. And we had given some of our product. It was a 1-to-1, similar to the emulsion that we have today. And we did our spiel. We were telling him about their products and history, and he was answering all of his questions. And, 15, 20 minutes go by, and we can just see, his shoulders are calming down a little bit. He's sort of paying a little bit better attention. He's a little bit more reclined in the chair that he was sitting. And so we asked him, it's been 20 minutes, how you feel? And he was like, meh, I don't really feel anything. And it was his wife who looked at him and was like, what are you talking about? Like, I can see you are more comfortable. And he was sort of like leaned into it. He's like, oh, maybe you're right that I'm not quite as tense. But even he just didn't quite, he wasn't listening to his body. And so I think, as you said, the term Renaissance is right on, because for a lot of people, it's a muscle that they don't use very often. Their body and their aches are just what it is. And you wake up with lower back pain or that knee pain or that ankle you rolled in high school, or, everyone has that little thing that just becomes normal. And, one of the things we have some really amazing long-term customers, and a few of them have been using our products since the beginning, so, 5-6 years now. And the differences from what they started using it at the very beginning versus why they keep using it, one of the terms that I'll always remember is she was, I think, 80 years old or a little over 80, and she gave this comment that her brain felt younger. And I didn't know that you could feel your brain. But that's sort of like, how do you even quantify that improvement in health? But it really took, a good 3-4 years of consistent, regular use, past why she first started it, through all of the learning of how much and how often and, which products she uses when, and then she got to this benefit. And so I think that's where the Renaissance is coming, is once people start using this, once hemp and CBD gets so cheap that it's in, shampoos and foot washes and makeups and, all of those things, that little consistent regular use over time, I believe, can have profound impacts on society as a whole. And, perhaps the last 80 to 100 years of prohibition had some unforeseen consequences that may not even be, easily quantifiable.
Oh, well said. Well said. I just think that is just so profound about that gentle and subtle alignment that we must have as a collective society. And yeah, now I want to get my grandma. My grandmother calls her cream, her miracle cream. I got her an infused cream that's very effective for killing the arthritic pain that she experiences. But I really do truly, the 2 weeks that I've now been taking your Randy's remedy, of course I had tried it before, but I'm doing it again. And it is, it's so amazing to understand that we can develop our senses more and we can attune them more acutely so that we're not blindsided by illness, but instead we know when our body is off, and we know, furthermore, how to help it and nourish it and love it to come back into balance before it goes too far. And I think the whole understanding of disease in general is going to change over the next half century dramatically, to where people really start to look and think of the body in a different way, that we're not like an automobile, that we're more like the earth herself, and that we're constantly being born and constantly dying, and it's about nourishment over time. I love everything about this this interview and what you guys said.
I think you've said some really, we're very comfortable talking about, the ecology of the earth, the environment that we live in. But when we start talking about the ecology of our bodies, it starts to sound a little bit weird. But I think one of the really helpful things for us has been my mother's perspective, because you said something earlier about how different everyone is and how important it is to treat everyone as an individual. But as my mom would say, there is far more that we have in common with each other than we have different. But it is those differences that make the difference. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about cannabis is that it is a social medicine. And what I mean by that is not only is it a medicine that people use socially, but it tends to sort of encourage, socialization and community, because it is a plant. It's something that is often cultivated in people's backyards. It's one of the most productive agricultural plants we have. And so the ability for someone to grow their own, treat themselves and their neighbors and their families is very reasonable. That's not really something that you can do except with food. People who grow tomatoes, know exactly, what time of year those tomatoes come in, because anybody who comes close is getting a bag of tomatoes. So getting people in tune with their environment and their bodies, and also, what I find very helpful is that when you're using cannabis medicinally, you're not reliant on traditional diagnostics. You're not going to the hospital to get your blood drawn or to make sure that the drugs you're taking are working. You're asking yourself, or your caregiver is asking you, questions that probe your quality of life first and foremost. I myself find that the first question that I usually ask people is, are you getting a good night's sleep? Because I found that over the years, sleep is a pretty good proxy for health. If you're getting a good night's sleep, if you wake up feeling rested, the likelihood that you're doing pretty well in other regards is usually pretty high. But if you're not getting a good night's sleep and you're not waking up feeling rested, then, we really need to interrogate what's going on and figure out whether there's something in your diet or your lifestyle, or if there's something, medically wrong, where you need to go actually see a doctor and get some diagnostics run. But, oftentimes, we speak to quality of life and symptom management as opposed to treatment. Not because, cannabis can't be effective at treating symptoms, but as we would often tell our clients, it's great that you can use our products when you have symptoms, but we don't want you to have symptoms. We want your
let's
symptoms
get into
to be so well
preventative
managed.
medicine.
Exactly. And so, when your symptoms are so well managed that you don't experience them, well, that usually means that your body has room to heal. And we spoke earlier about inflammation, and one of the things that people don't always appreciate is that inflammation is an enemy to healing. An inflamed body cannot heal because the inflammation is itself damaging the body. And so by controlling that inflammation, you give the body room to heal. And since the body will heal at its own pace, you have to be very diligent in managing your body's inflammation so that the body can heal. Over time, as Brendon alluded to...
That is so important. Tyler, that is so important. We need to do an article on that because that is really huge. I've just got to pause there for a second.
I'm taking notes. I'm going to be writing all week.
No, seriously, because honestly, that is the key. That is the golden nugget to people transforming, thinking of the body like a car, and how we have to kind of cut things away or take things out or things have failed, versus a more loving and spacious understanding that we have to give the body space to heal.
I'd like to pass I'd like to pass this, to my mother briefly because, her perspective, as the professor of nutrition, has really helped us to kind of shepherd the conversation sort of away from the sort of medical talk and more towards the diet, nutrition, the language of diet and nutrition, because we believe that while it's been a boon for the sort of legalization movement, the medicalization of cannabis has sort of distorted the conversation somewhat, in that it's framed the conversation around medical terms, which can be helpful but can also be limiting. When we talk about cannabinoids, we like people to think in terms of vitamins and minerals. And as we say, we believe that when these products work for you, that the reason that they're working is that for some reason your body is deficient in the naturally occurring cannabinoids that it normally produces. And so by supplementing with plant cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, you're able to resolve that deficiency and many of the symptoms associated with it. But as is the case with, any other sort of vitamin, or nutrient deficiency, if you stop using it, the deficiency will likely return and the symptoms will also. I often appeal to the example of scurvy because it's something that people have often heard of. Scurvy was a disease that, sailors used to get before they discovered, that vitamin C could both treat and prevent scurvy. But I would explain to people that, if you show up to your doctor with scurvy, the doctor is going to prescribe, I believe, between 2,000 and 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C, taken 2 to 4 times a day for 2 to 4 weeks until your symptoms subside. Once your symptoms subside, you only need to get about 10 milligrams of vitamin C a day, and you'll never get scurvy. So, we use that as a way to sort of frame, now, okay, let's be looking at these cannabinoids. Well, in the beginning, when your symptoms are worst, the likelihood that you may need to use, more than average is probably high. That's why we, made clear that, it's important to use as much as you need to use, but to also keep in mind that as your health improves, that you may not need to continue to use as much as you were using in the beginning when your health was at its worst. And that sort of, I think, helps people to pay attention not only to how they feel, But how that changes over time. And the physician that I used to work with would often describe cannabis as a 20% drug because he believed that it really only helped symptoms by about 20%, but that those improvements were cumulative. And so while it may be difficult to sort of notice the incremental change, over time it becomes increasingly obvious. And, sometimes, one of the ways that we would often promote our products with our customers is we would actually encourage them to, use a bottle and then stop. And then see how they feel that week, after they've been using the product consistently and regularly for a while. And what we've found is that typically, usually around day 2 or day 3, the symptoms start to bubble up. Usually by, day 5, day 6, they start to, notice that they're not feeling as well as they have been feeling. And typically by the end of the week, they've sort of put 2 and 2 together and realized, what changed. And that's usually when we get them back on board for life, because once people realize that this is, a key to their health and well-being, most people, just assume not ever being without it. Just like I'm never far away from my water bottle, I don't like being dehydrated. I discovered that when I get headaches and feel irritated at the end of the day, it's usually because I just haven't drank enough water. And I think the same is true when I've, gone a few days without taking my Randy's Remedy. I notice that I just, my fuse is a little bit shorter, the edges are a little bit sharper. And, I just, I don't feel how I want to feel. And that's sort of why I stick to my regimen.
Yeah, and that's just so dynamic and so important. And I think this is the important work. It's very simple work. When I was in herb school, I studied how the pharmaceutical industry was formed and how they went after the apothecarist, and they made sure that the apothecarist was knocked out. And it's not that allopathic medicine hasn't done so much good, especially Linda. I still respect your work and your perspective.
That's okay.
But what's interesting, it's like a pendulum swinging. And really what it is about integrating these two worlds and bringing these worlds together in union and helping people to really become good observers of themselves and pay attention. Just like with cannabis medicine, we talk about titration and that over time the body changes. And I just think that alone is something important to remind people. I know it sounds archaic or simplistic, but really it could do a lot of people a lot of good. And that's why I'm really happy that I had you guys on tonight to discuss this. And there's just, obviously, we passed the break, so screw it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right on through.
Julie, the information that was being shared was too important for me at that point to say, hey, it's break time. We couldn't
interrupt it.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought to myself, I'm just going to let the conversation go, and I'll run the commercial at the end of the broadcast.
Yeah,
that's
what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So we're just going to keep going. Because I just think it's so important. So I wanted to give Brendon and Brendon, and Linda a chance. Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied. A chance to also speak to this, what we're speaking of, because I think it is so important. And I was going to talk about other stuff, but this is taking precedence.
Yeah, definitely.
Brendon, go ahead.
I'll go first and kind of hopefully set you up. Because, Julie, I think what you said is having this, what we're talking about being a pendulum, is right on. The whole work during the 60s and 70s and maybe even a little bit earlier was breaking down our knowledge of human physiology and what's actually going on in our body. I always think it's ironic that we found the phytocannabinoid first and then found the endocannabinoid in our body once we realized that something was going on. And the same thing with the sort of standard practice in the pharmaceutical industry is break the problem down to a single molecule and try and turn that molecule into a drug product. and then market and sell it to the people who are dealing with that issue. But what we learned very quickly with cannabis is, I think it's Marinol is synthetic THC. It just is not as effective as whatever's going on in the plant. And so despite being created in, I want to say, the mid-'70s, we still have this cannabis revolution that we're dealing with because the pharmaceutical answer to cannabis just didn't match up with what the plant was delivering. And so now the pendulum is swinging back as we're realizing the complexities. And I think that given the technology advances that we've had as in parallel, there's real possibility of, N of one style treatments where a drug is designed specifically for you, given your genetic makeup and whatever mutations you might happen to have, or, perhaps even metrics that we don't even know are important yet. But with the, amazing processing powers that we have and the ability to collect better data with, Fitbits and all these technologies, that we could actually understand the entourage effect and why this particular combination of ingredients works better than any one individual ingredient. And so, Linda, I'd love to pass it off to you as to, how do you see the pharmaceutical industry pivoting? And, I allude to the 3 markets for cannabis products, hemp-based products, FDA-approved drugs, and the state adult use programs. I don't think any 3 of those markets are going away, but I do think that they'll become a little bit more defined, and that rules and regulations will sort of carve out specific markets for different types of products and whatnot. And, Julie, I love what you said, too, about, whether there's some conspiracy theories or whether it is people looking out for, the businesses that they're creating. I do think that things work together, and perhaps the pharmaceutical industry maybe has a greater influence on the FDA than, maybe they should. But is that a tough enough tee up for you, Mom?
Yeah, thanks, babe. Well, I always, when we're speaking, when we actually went out in the real world and had conferences and people surrounding us, a lot of times I'd say, I have to take my black hat off and, put on my green hat because, pharmaceutical companies can be easy targets, for what's wrong. And I'm not saying that, pharmaceutical drug prices aren't ridiculous and that there haven't been historically, a number of cases where, you could almost say it's criminal. On the other hand, I appreciated, Julie, when you said, look at what we've done. Look at where we are today in terms of, treating diseases that, we used to die from. I mean, even AIDS, which unfortunately is still prevalent, but I was at San Diego Hospice when, people were simply dying of it. There was nothing to help these people live with HIV. Whereas today, our goal is they can live a long, healthy life and be HIV positive. And we believe that one day people will be able to live, knowing that they have cancerous tumors in their body, but their immune system is keyed up and we're producing antibodies, so we keep it in check and you can live a long time. Brendon mentioned 2 things. One, when I now give a lecture. No, that's not true. I have Tyler give the lecture for me on the endocannabinoid system, which I actually added to my course about 3 years ago. It was very interesting. Students actually love it now, but it was like, what? But, Brendon made the point, and I do find it amazing that it was in Israel they were looking to understand how THC worked. So they took THC, they used some cell lines, then they tried it in mice, and lo and behold, it bound because we can now measure by putting a targeted agent onto THC, like imagine a fluorescent probe, and measure where it goes. And, somebody said, well, that's crazy. Why is THC made in a plant binding on cells in vertebrates, including humans. And that led us to the discovery of the endocannabinoid system, which has more receptors than any other physiological system in our body. In fact, I just submitted an article to Skunk on the endocannabinoid system, so you can read all about it if it gets, published online. But it is
of course, going to get published.
It is the global modulator of homeostasis. So it is the answer to those people that probably come to you and say, oh, come on, Julie, it can't do all of that. But the reality is, because it literally, you can imagine it sits above all our other physiological systems, it actually can do all of that. It can interact with, inflammation, digestion, sleep, anxiety, by binding to our central nervous system, peripheral nervous system, receptors on our GI tract, all of those places. So it actually can do everything. And I think the next thing is that just maybe I'm looking at the time, Randy's Remedy, is a passion story. And we obviously could talk about it forever. We actually are in the unique position, which I was going to toss it back to Brendon, we have the ability, I call it a Vitamixer on steroids, but we can actually produce production runs that meet that mid-level. So a lot of startup companies don't have the, wherewithal to, or the need, because they're not selling enough, to do a 20,000 unit run. So what do? We started in the kitchen sink, of course, and many people stay there. But we are actually able to produce a couple thousand units that keeps us with an inventory that can sustain us. And so, we hope to help other, startup companies, people just entering the space, by providing those type of production services at that level. It's really, when you go from 215 to Prop 64, there's a lot of expense in going in that direction, which is part of the reason we went to hemp, besides the fact that we believe in the plant. Hemp has just, I want a hemp house and a hemp car and hemp clothes and, all that stuff. I think it's an unbelievable plant. People forget that during World War II, farmers were required to grow hemp because we used it for sails, for ropes, and everything that was needed. I don't think as an industry we can afford to alienate, and this is probably my closing, the pharmaceutical industry. And I'd like to say that things have changed. As mentioned, both my kids mentioned, I'm on faculty at UCSD. And seriously, who would have thought that we would have integrative medicine, departments of mindfulness? We have N of 1 studies. I actually had a client, this is my black hat going on, that got an approval from the FDA for hematological cancer called DLBCL. But this was a true personalized medicine. They actually would take that individual's blood, send it out, make a gamish, a nice Jewish word, put a target on it, send it back to the hospital, and re-inject it into that specific individual. The CEO of this company, I was at a shareholders meeting, and I'll never forget it, and he goes, I can explain this very simply. It's a car with GPS. They're actually called CAR T cells, which makes it even more unique, but I thought that analogy was perfect. You're taking a molecule and you're targeting it specifically to a receptor on a cancer cell in that individual. That's pretty phenomenal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the industry and the FDA are going to have to figure out how do you produce it? How do you scale something that's for one person? How do you charge for it? So we are at, the only constant in the world is change. The only constant in life is change. So we are evolving, and in many ways, I think both industries can learn from each other. Integrative medicine is a real thing. When I was growing up, when Randy got sick, I had to search for palliative care. Hell, I had to look the word up in the dictionary when I got hired by San Diego Hospice. I didn't even know what it was. Now physicians can be board certified in palliative medicine. These are huge
You're
steps
amazing.
That get buried.
We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and we don't need to demonize. That's what I've realized, heading into my 45th year, is that what the pharmaceutical industry did is they said, hey, this thing works, and now we're going to isolate it. But what that did is it separated it from the natural world, and it separated the plant from all of the other constituents that are a part of the plant that can create efficacy. And then also this idea with dosing. I think that we went, we'll look back on this time in human history, a couple of 100 years from now and go, wow, that was the dark ages when we were futzing around with isolates and didn't understand what the deeper reaches of what we were doing. And I think that's what you're touching on tonight, which is so profound, and I'm so thankful that we've had this conversation, is we can change. The only change is constant, and the only constant is change, and that the fact that you guys are showing, and I'm listening too, that the efficacy is in the smaller dose, in the holistic, whole plant medicine dose, and it's over time. And that over time, it gives the body time and space to come into balance again. This is a whole new way of thinking about health and illness and medicine in general, isn't it?
It definitely is. And,
we emphasizes
we
the
have
fact...
to give, sorry, Tyler, one thing. We have to give credit where credit's due. The greatest example we have is GW Pharma. I mean, they produced and got approved a whole plant product.
Yeah.
And, and that to me,
I don't know if I'm going to be singing their praises. I don't know if I'm going to be singing their praises yet. But I can appreciate that they were a part of the evolution.
Right.
It's challenging to acknowledge because, we do, we have to be grateful for their science. As I've said to many people, what GW proved is that the active ingredient in a plant that you can legally grow in your backyard can be effectively used to manage epilepsy. Now, they would probably object to that statement because their product specifically has been approved for those purposes, but we all know the truth, and we know, thanks to some of their work, how better to use these products. And so I think that what we've tried to do is acknowledge the common ground where there is common ground, emphasize that it is the complexity of the plant that allows people to best utilize it for their own purposes. This isn't a one-size-fits-all silver bullet solution. This is a complex solution for a complex problem because we are complex organisms. And I think that as we have come to appreciate just how complicated we are starting to look at natural products, plants that evolved alongside us over thousands and thousands of years and have been used for their medicinal, beneficial health purposes for long, long time, and really start to look closely and humbly at how we cannot, extract from these natural products, but really optimize the natural products, use the tools that science has given us in order to make sure that these natural solutions are both safe, effective, and I think most importantly, sustainable. Because that's, something that people don't always acknowledge when they, start talking about some of these natural products, is that, if everybody started to use these natural products, they wouldn't last very long in nature. And so we have to be mindful that these natural products are produced sustainably and can scale to provide for everyone who needs it without, sacrificing the natural world from which they came. So it's a hard problem, and we're glad to be a part of figuring out the solution. But I've long given up trying to find simple answers to these questions because they're not simple questions, and simple answers are rarely satisfying.
Well said. Bravo. I must have you guys on the show again.
Oh, yes.
Because there's still so much that we could discuss, and certainly, you know, all of the wonderful other plant allies. So if you guys would be up for it, I'd love to have you on the show again. Maybe we could do it every quarter and also speak about the current status of the industry. What I'm really excited about for everyone listening tonight, thank you, is that Linda and Brendon and Tyler are all staff writers at Skunk. They're contributing content. I'm excited to share their voice and their insights. So, you know, stay tuned, and I definitely want to have you guys on again. Can you guys share where people can find you and how they can, you know, go to your website? Please state it again. I know we did earlier, and also your social handles and anything else that you would like to share.
Brendon, can you
Sure,
them all quickly?
We try and do our best on all social medias, Facebook, Instagram. I think we even have a couple YouTube videos up there. But most of our traffic will hopefully drive people to our website, randysclub.com. And we've talked a lot about how we recommend people use it. And so signing up for our subscription is what we really encourage people to do. It'll allow them to get these products every month and get on that consistent regular use platform. So once again, that's randysclub.com. And if you use the search engines, Randy's Remedy, Randy's Club, we've done a pretty good job of coming up near the top.
We also have a Facebook wellness page, which we post on quite a bit along the lines we've been discussing.
Good. Good to know. I'll add that to the post.
And go to their website, guys. I highly recommend it. They've done a ton of wonderful educational articles that can only help and they're just, because of their science background, I think that everybody can benefit from interacting with this beautiful Strause family. So thank you guys so much for coming and spending time with me and Al tonight. We really appreciate it, and deeply inspired always by you guys and how you guys move in the world and the work that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
It's been our pleasure.
Oh, it's
And pleasure to meet you,
Thank
Al.
you all for hosting. We appreciate you.
We really appreciate you coming on and talking, answering Julie's questions and talking to our listeners about everything that you guys have been doing, the research and how everything is done. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to the next one, that's for sure. All right, let's see.
Thank you very much, everybody.
You're welcome. I know we gave out your website and all that stuff, but just out of curiosity, was there anything else you'd like to throw a shout out to?
The one social media we didn't mention was Medium. It's a writer's blog platform, and we do publish quite a few articles on there that dive into quite a few of the topics that we've talked about.
Good. Julie, got anything?
Yeah, just come to skunkmagazine.com and check out what we're doing. We're getting ready for the summer issue to be launched on the streets by the end of this month, June. And it's featuring supernova women of color in cannabis. And there's many incredible stories in there, so please check us out. You can get a subscription, and it's very easy to do and very affordable. And we would so appreciate the support, and we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight and spending time with us. Thank you so much, Al, and thank you to our guests.
That's right. Just so everybody knows, Julie's filling in this month, doing every show except for next week. Kim is on holiday, so Julie's been filling in. You got next week off, so it'll just be me, myself, and I, and whoever I decide is who's going to be my special guest. So, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in a marathon.
You sure are. All right. You can find the Pace Radio Network on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. We're on Instagram as well. And you can find us at paceradio.net. Thank you go out to our sponsors. Legacy420.com, which is Canada's largest First Nations cannabis dispensary, as well as BMA Hydroponics at bmahydroponics.com, Camelford Lifestyle Shop in downtown Camelford, plus Dr. Buck's Cannabis Trimming Solutions at drbuckcts.com. And as always, a special thank you to our guests, Linda, Tyler, and Brendon Strause of Randy's Club. Thank you for coming on, and as I said earlier, you guys were excellent, and I look forward to the next conversation that we have. And as always, thank you to Julie, and to our listeners, thank you, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
You know I blame it on industry.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Do you want to hear what patients and cannabis advocates have to say? If so, then catch the Pace Radio Show Wednesday nights here on paceradio.net.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
The People's Alliance of Cannabis in Canada is an organization working to improve cannabis legalization in Canada. They have a mission and values that includes all Canadians, no matter where they come from. The values are including everyone, as no one should be excluded from participating, equality, diversity, advocacy, along with cannabis education and research, plus industry, safety, and professional standards. If this is an organization that has the same values as you, check them out at peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Once again, peoplesallianceofcannabisincanada.ca. Check them out.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
The People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network provides its listeners with news, information, and a place to be heard. This is done with a twice-weekly broadcast of the Reefer Reporters and by providing cannabis advocates a place to be heard through Cannabis and Coffee to Marijuana and the award-winning Pace Radio Show. Catch it all here at paceradio.net.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains. And when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plants, garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
What is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network? It's a network of people advocating cannabis education.
CP operates a medicinal cannabis signing clinic. If you want to grow your own medicinal cannabis and are located anywhere in Canada, then I'd like to suggest that you give them a call. They can be reached at 1-613-967-9888. That's 1-613-967-9888, and grow on with CP.
Who has huge buds? You do. If you shop at BMA Hydroponics, attend one of BMA's educational seminars and learn the secrets of growing, harvesting, processing, and consuming quality cannabis and cannabis products. Learn how to make better extracts, edibles, and medicinal creams at prices you can afford. Visit BMA Hydroponics at 404 Maitland Drive, Belleville, or call 613-967-9888.
The only way to go.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.